Untitled about chivalry, most people, Mother Dan was all over my case because he thought, like, this is too provocative. People are going to be mad. It's going to drive people away, but it's all right. So, evil again, going back, not in the modern world, but in the medieval era. So, here we go. Chivalry, people, you know, oftentimes nowadays bring back chivalry. I want a chivalrous man, you know, someone who can show these things of like holding the door open. But let's be honest here, that idea of chivalry is actually false because chivalry was limited to the knights, which it comes from a French word in the first place. And it was their relationship not only to the state, but also to the other nobility. So guess what? Oh, by the way, every trigger warning you can possibly think of, it's said now. So, pretty much what ended up happening was, you know, knights during, for instance, the 100 Years' War would go in and they would save their lady in distress, but they'd be in battle, a peasant would come up to them, they'd just slaughter them. They could be ransomed if they were another knight, but not if they were a peasant. So this was an elite system for the elite people, and in battle, you know, or for instance, when you're sieging a town, if you refused to submit the town officials, then normally it was acceptable for 3 days of rape and pillage. So that is something that's not considered very chivalrous, but was acceptable back then. So we need a new paradigm that goes beyond chivalry as in this sort of system that everyone sort of wants to follow, but then it just gets misconstrued half the time. But out of that system, we get this tradition of courtly love in medieval literature, and it's supposed to reverse the roles. The woman is in control, but she's always cold and aloof, and on top of it, she sends the men off to these sacrificial missions that go way beyond just self-sacrifice to the point of it's just so that the woman can selfishly say that, oh, this man is going to do something for me. So in TROILUS and CRISEYDE, for instance, it is a medieval work written by Chaucer, and it's based off an Italian work called Urbana-Champaign. TROILUS over here is in Troy, and then CRISEYDE is a lowly woman. He falls in love with her, but TROILUS is part of the royal family, and thus they cannot be together. Also, it's the Trojan Wars going on, and CRISEYDE's father went over to the Greeks, so that's a big no-no. And pretty much he opines for her, and this whole courtly love tradition is all about, so to put it, I don't know, lightly, the man wants to get in the pants of the woman, or in the dress. You know, so, and that's essentially what courtly love is all about. It's, you know, people act like it's just such a noble thing. Yeah, right. And he does, you know, they get together at one point. The uncle, the word pandering that we have actually comes from CRISEYDE, well, TROILUS and CRISEYDE, they have a relative, and I think it's CRISEYDE's uncle, his name's Pandro, and he panders in the affairs and pretty much gives them this opportunity to be together, and that's where we get that lovely word from. But pretty much she goes for a Greek man, and TROILUS kind of, he doesn't die, but pretty much emotionally dies with a broken heart. And that's Tristan and Isolde, another famous one, German work, romance, also epic, written a little bit later, but it was an oral tradition beforehand. There's a more recent movie about it in the past like 10 years, and then here's like one of your romantic Victorian era paintings that every medieval work has, because the historians loved medievalism for whatever reason. And pretty much Tristan and Isolde, if you don't know the story, Tristan goes, fights in battle for King Mark, who's the king of England. He goes off to Ireland, picks up Isolde for King Mark, defeats the enemy in battle, but during the journey, Tristan consumes a love potion and falls in love with Isolde, and you have this whole courtly love tradition again, and big love triangle, and it's not honestly the best romance. You have a lot of going back and forth. Isolde with her actual husband, King Mark, and then Tristan, and why the hell, in the first place, would people want to imitate chivalry and courtly love when all it is about in these literary works, is just affairs half the time and no faithfulness in the first place? So, that's why we're going to enter the modern world. Even better, in the modern world we have vampires and werewolves. People like Twilight, I'm not sure why. First off, Edward's behavior is creepy and stalkerish, but for some reason, sitting at her bedside watching her sleep before they're even dating, even while they're dating, it's just, what the heck? You know? And then on top of it, once they begin dating, it's like, oh, you have to separate yourself from other people in the pack. Love, whether it's through friendship, or romance, or family, that should not involve separation. So we have a big issue here looking at, we already have one work of literature, so we're going to go back in time a little bit, because it's also the modern world over 200 years earlier. The Pride and Prejudice, where's the chivalry in this? Pretty much nowhere, because Darcy's a jerk to Elizabeth. Yeah, she still falls in love with him. So I'm only briefly talking about this. Oh, and by the way, I used this image with the BBC version, because last time I got a bunch of flack for using the American version. So, you know, yeah, Colin Firth is a good Darcy. I didn't really like her portrayal of Elizabeth, though. So, pretty much it shows that, no, it's these two people who are searching for something. They're longing for love, and at the same time, they are able to find it without any of these high, lone values of like, oh, he should be good, he should be nice. It shows that an effort needs to be taken in a romantic relationship for it to evolve and grow. And then we get to War and Peace, which is Tolstoy. So David over here mentioned that I'm not a huge fan. People always ask me about Tolstoy and Dostoevsky, but they're the only two Russian authors most people know, so I will use Tolstoy as an example. First, we'll go to War and Peace, which has more than 500 characters in the whole novel. How do we know this? Some scholar decided to go through each page and count them all. That's why we have literature professors. Great value. Pay them $60,000 and they'll read a book. This is Natasha Rostova. This is Anatoly Karagin. He is what you would think of as a gallant man. He's a soldier. He goes and he fights in battle. He's a good, fighter. But, so you might say, he has chivalric value, he's gallant. But no, he actually has multiple affairs with people, going back to chivalry again and courtly love tradition. And he, at one point, tries to elope with her, and it's only through the help of her family that whole thing was prevented, because Natasha then is able to get into a meaningful relationship to show that love is not all about just these two people separated from society, but it's also related to friendship and family, because guess what? Yes, we have the Bible verse of, the woman and the man, they leave their family and cleave to each other. But at the same time, that doesn't mean they leave society. They have no relationship whatsoever except for those two. No, because what are we called in Christianity? We're just as human people. We are, as Aristotle would say, social people, rational people. So we need this connection between each other and among each other. So it's not just two people going off and having a lovey-dovey time together. It's those two people and their interaction then overflowing into society, because if the family is the basic social unit, if the families are good, and yes, there will be struggles, then love in and of itself is going to grow and help society as a whole. And our last work, well, actually, we'll talk a little bit more about War and Peace, because most people in here will probably never read it because it's way too damn long. It's 1,200 pages long. I mean, come on. He could have at least eliminated a good 400 pages, because he talks about his philosophy of history, which is pretty much like A plus B and all these other weird terms, and he tries to make a mathematical equation. Then he says, oh, great people like Napoleon, they mean nothing. It's all just these little vectors and forces work through us. And then eventually it all comes together, and as masses and peasant people, we just move history along. What the heck? So, yeah, that's Tolstoy. He kind of went crazy towards the end of his life, by the way. He wrote an essay condemning Shakespeare as immoral. The funny thing about it is, he says the popularity of Shakespeare was either due to propaganda by German literature professors or mass hypnosis. So we have Peter, well, Natasha, there's another character in there, Pierre Bezukhov. He is more of this intellectual type, bubbling around. He was in a relationship with a woman, but she's considered like this statue figure. And it's clear that, also sexualized and everything like that. But it's clearly, this misses the mark. And what's interesting about this idea of missing the mark is the word sin ultimately comes from Greek, which is amartia, which means to miss the mark. It's this term used in archery of that sin is not so much, this sort of separate thing. It's us working through our day, actions and processes, but rather than hitting the mark, which is ultimately union with Christ, we miss. We shoot the arrow, maybe it falls a little bit short. Okay, we can work a little bit better. Sometimes it goes off way into the forest and we screwed up. But the great thing is the church allows us, repentance and metanoia and all these fancy terms, which mean that we can get back into a relationship with God, because that God, that relationship mirrors our relationship with every single person, because God calls us to love intimately each person. That doesn't necessarily mean romantically, but what it does mean is this idea of self-sacrifice, as Pat mentioned, or the sense that we can hope even in despair, as Father Dan mentioned. And we'll go to our last work, Anna Karenina. There was recently an American film, kind of an ambivalent opinion about it. It's good in some respects, very good. And Kitty and Logan over here, Anna and Brodsky, and it shows Anna Karenina had that famous line of all happy families are alike, all unhappy families are unhappy in their own way. Well, a little bit more complex than that, but that's Tolstoy. He always likes to say these like paradoxical statements and get people to think, but most of the time it's like, Tolstoy, look at your own relationships, because his family was, oh my. But so Brodsky and Anna here show how you can go wrong. There's still the possibility for repentance. But unfortunately, spoiler alert, Anna jumps in front of the train. Kitty and Loban over here though, they're what you want to aim for. Loban is pretty much the most autobiographical character of Tolstoy you'll find. But Kitty and Loban, they start off as friends, and then there's a lot of this, do I like her, do I not? And Loban's very, just nervous and anxious, but it shows that through time and through working and having good friendships, because it is ultimately his friendship with brother Oblonsky, who then leads to a lot of meetings with Kitty, because Oblonsky is married to Anna's sister, and it's Tolstoy, it's relationship lines all over the place, and you can't keep them straight. But these two are what you want to look for. So having looked at literary analogs, we'll go to our last thing. So I chose Letter of Divine Sent icon by St. John Climacus, and the famous icon of Christ in St. Catherine's monastery at the Sinai, around there. Pretty much, what is love all about? What is literature showing to us? Love is what we are all drawn to because it is Christ. And on top of it, the reason why I chose this icon is because it always looks strange. Because this icon shows, if you look at the right side, Christ is all righteous and all powerful. He, as we often say in the East, if God, for whatever reason, just chose to look away once from humanity or the world, that it would all be nothingness. It all just bursts into anything. Because Christ shows us what it means to ultimately live as human beings, and our true purpose, and our love which connects us to each person, so that we can ultimately become like God, like Christ. As Athanasius famously said, God became man so that man might become God, so that we can find our true purpose and become one with Him. And the reason for the ladder of divine ascent is because our spiritual journey is a ladder going through steps, each successive. And sometimes we fail. And, if it's by the time of the last judgment, you might end up going to hell. But we can always go back up the ladder as long as we're still here on earth. So John Climacus has one of the steps in this ladder is called the virtue of the remembrance of death. The fact that we could die at any moment, which draws us and makes us aware of our own mortality and humanity, so that we can draw closer to each other and never forget that each human person is an embodiment of Christ. And what is the final step? Love. Because you need love to ultimately unite and break down barriers, because then we can all be in communion with each other. And I'm probably way over time. That's it.